Alright guys, welcome back to another video on the Moto E4. The Moto E4 is a phone that I picked up and I was super excited to grab this because, I got the Moto G4 Play, and that phone was fantastic, and it's no exception with this one. This phone is actually really, really good. Literally, there is just nothing bad to say about this phone at this point. It's really, really, really good in the hand. So let's start with some things that it actually does well. The surprising point for me was the cameras. The cameras on this device definitely supersede a lot of cameras that are in this category. I think Motorola has done a fantastic job at putting the right cameras in their pocket-friendly devices. Now this phone right here is, let me do a low light. Let me just do a photo right here real quick, and then I'll pop it up for you. Let me get a better shot. I gotta turn off my LEDs. That's what it is. And I'm gonna take a photo here. Yeah, that's a fantastic shot. Yeah, I'll take one over here, and I'll put those up. But this phone has turned out to be a fantastic phone on cameras. I mean, you think about it. You heard me boasting and bragging, saying, "Oh, I got this for $40." I mean, the phone doesn't originally retail for $40. That was just a sale that was for the Verizon version, which happens. But it's still, I got it for $40, and that's a really good deal. I could definitely recommend this phone for a number of reasons. First of all, the cameras are good. It has a removable battery. That is a huge plus. A lot of phones today are not doing removable batteries. They're doing embedded batteries, and that's just the direction that smartphones are starting to go. But Motorola has decided, and just like LG, there's still some other phones still do removable batteries. But Motorola has decided we're going to give them a removable battery, and we're going to make that battery good enough. I'm surprised at how nice the battery is on this phone. It's one of those things where you have to wonder, how is it that they can do this and other companies can't do it? I know it's a matter of the processor. I know that. It has to be optimized right, and it has to have the right processor. There's a lot that goes into giving a phone good battery. But still, why are other OEMs not doing it? I mean, this battery is only 2,800 milliamps, but again, it is pushing a 720p display, and the Snapdragon 427 is in here, I believe it is. That's good enough. This display is actually a really good display, and the fact that this phone has good cameras, a really nice display, a really long battery life on this phone, and the performance is good. I mean, even though it has a Snapdragon 427 or 425, whichever one is in here, this is actually a really good processor. I haven't had any hiccups with this thing. I've actually done some recordings with this thing, and you guys didn't even know it. I just changed the audio out, even though the audio on this was actually pretty decent. But I did some recordings with this phone, and this phone is really good. I mean, the fact that it has an actual LED on the front flash and it doesn't light up the screen, that's a huge plus too. But the phone isn't perfect, but overall, check it off. You have a really nice screen, a nice size phone. It's a 5-inch 720p display, 8 megapixel camera on the back that shoots in 1080p, and it's really good footage. And then you've got, even though this phone has 2 gigs of RAM, Motorola's software is optimized so right that you don't have to worry about lag and stutter. And this just, again, it makes me wonder how some of the OEMs that sell phones for $700, $800 can get away with, the mediocre performance that they have at some point or another. This phone is pretty much stock Android. This is the new icon layout here for Motorola. Wasn't really a fan of it at first because it's kind of like Nexus, like, with all the rounded icons, but that's fine. This isn't a skin. This is the Motorola skin that comes with it. All the icons are not rounded off, but for the most part, the third-party apps, most of them are not rounded off, but for the most part, they're all pretty much about the same size, and it's good. It's really good. So again, let's check off some boxes here on what it does right, and then I'll tell you about some things that I'm not too fond of. So the screen, if in fact it was a 1080p display, they will be chopping into they will be competing with themselves. So they can't do that, because then you start to compete with the Moto G line, and you don't want to do that, because people will want to buy that phone over this one more than likely. But the screen is nice, but it's 720p, but it's still good enough. But some people would say, oh, I want a 5-inch 1080p display. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the pixel count on here is 294, so it's not a shabby display at all. But, you know, it has a 720p display. And some people feel like even budget and pocket-friendly phones should at least have a 1080p display. And I kind of don't disagree. It's about preference, but I will use a phone that has a 720p display in a heartbeat. So yeah, the display could be it could be 1080p, you know, that's fine. But it doesn't shoot at 60 frames per second, and it doesn't shoot at 4K. And you know, that's just one of those things that, you know, I would have liked 60 frames per second, but I'm not gonna complain about it. Now, the fact that this has USB 2.0, it could have gotten a Type-C port. It could have gotten a Type-C port back there. Why it doesn't have one, I don't know. Because then that would enable, like, they could possibly have fast charging and everything. But, you know, it doesn't have a Type-C, and I've gotten used to Type-C because I have a Type-C in my car everywhere. So it's kind of a bummer that it doesn't have Type-C. Now, aside from, like, those few things, this back cover, as you can see, it grabs fingerprints like crazy. That's not really that's just something that some people look at and they say, oh my gosh, you know, ugh, I hate the fingerprints. And I understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I understand. Now, on the positive note, this one has a fingerprint reader. A fingerprint reader. The front camera and rear camera are really good. Fantastic battery. Performance is really good. And the price point is decent. I mean, think about it. It's the size of the phone is really nice. I mean, this has a 5-inch display, and this has a 5.5-inch display. You know, this one has a 5.7-inch display. So this is a good size, man. It's a good size. It's a good size phone, and the fact that it has a fingerprint reader on it for this price range, yeah, it's doable. It's a good looking phone. But I guess more importantly, people today use their phones for social media. That's really all the average consumer does with their phones. They make phone calls, but they use social media pretty much for everything. That's what they do. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that I guess I get it. Like, I have these affordable phones laying out here because you don't really need to spend $1,000 on a phone just to do social media. These phones, the camera on the back, it's actually good, guys. I mean, it's good. There's no denying it. So you get a lot packed into this phone. Even if you were to pay $100 for this phone, you're still getting a good deal. You got a fingerprint reader, you got an SD card slot, you got adaptable storage, and that's another thing. This comes with 16 gigs onboard storage. That's a pretty big deal nowadays, especially for a pocket-friendly phone. Some people say that 32 gigs should be the standard. I totally agree. But for a phone of this price range, 16 gigs is good, because some phones are still coming out with 8 gigs, and that's just crazy. And if they do have 16 gigs, some of them use up almost half of that just for the operating system and their skin that they're putting on there. And that's where Motorola comes in. They don't do that. I mean, you do have some slight gestures when you pick up the pick up the screen, you know, light up for your notifications. There's little small things like that. The Moto gesture things in there. Double click the power button to turn on the camera. There are a few things, you know. Moto actions, I'm sorry. One button navigation. That's one that I don't normally turn on, you know. As you can see here, I don't even have it on. I don't have it on, but I'll do the setup with you guys right now. One button navigation is sweet. See, turn it on. And then you've got one button navigation. And with that, you end up getting all of your screen. I mean, that's something that only Motorola is doing. So there are things in this phone that are, like, I guess you could consider them high-end features, but at a pocket-friendly price. Motorola's doing it, man. And again, the fact that this phone has a fingerprint reader with long battery life and decent cameras, come on. I mean, where can you get that for $100 nowadays? You can get a pre-owned device and get that kind of those kind of specs, but other than that, not very many places. So it's your man Jay Will. I think I've had this phone for almost 2 weeks now, and I'm excited to say I've been using it. It's actually really, really solid. So I definitely can recommend it at this point. You know, I will give you another follow-up video later on. Look for a follow-up video on this device right here and on this device as well. But this is about the Moto. I'll see you guys in the next video. I did it again. I think I rhymed again. I think I did.